This video demonstrates and explains how to work with Ragdoller. Using the tools in Ragdoller, you can easily make any character a ragdoll, transition from animation state to ragdoll state based on character joints, or create an active ragdoll based on configurable joints. The ragdoll shown now is unadjusted, which is why it looks silly. Humanoid characters usually have a skeletal structure like this, a root to which the hip and spine are attached. The root usually has no skin, but serves as a connecting element. But there may be characters who have a hip as root and therefore have skin. For a standard skeleton, add a Ragdoller to the character and put the root bone of this character in the transform field named root and choose the desired joints generator. For a non-standard skeleton, add a Ragdoller to the character. Specify a root bone, enable root is joint, and put a spine bone in the transform field named connected to. Now select the desired joints generator. Now let's go through all the functionality of Ragdoller. Almost all UI elements have tooltips. In this pop-up, you can choose the Ragdoll's type. The state of the mirrored editing toggle indicates whether you can select and edit mirrored joints. You can also enable or disable autofocusing on the selected joint in the scene view. If necessary, you can use the focus button to focus on the joint object in the scene view. You can select joints for editing in two ways, from a schematic image or from a list. Root bone is not a joint, so it is not displayed in the schematic image, but is in the selection list. In Info, you can see and select the parent joint, add a child bone as a joint if necessary, or change the name of the group the joint belongs to. You can delete unnecessary joints. If necessary, with child joints or only child joints. The Select Game Object button will select a game object in the hierarchy. This object will have a temporary script for configuring this joint. The same setting is available in the Ragdoller editor. To return to the Ragdoller editor, click on the Select Editor button. In Joint, you can edit the axes, limits, and springs of the selected joint. For ease of joint setting up, its axes are visualized as arrows and limits as solid arcs in the scene view. Using the buttons in axes, you can select the local direction of the joint axis or enter them manually in the main axis and secondary axis fields. With mirrored editing enabled, any changes to the joint settings will automatically be mirrored in the mirrored joint settings. You can change the joint's limits manually in the limits fields. Or you can change them by using gizmos in scene view. The rotate buttons in the limit settings rotate the visualization of the limits in the scene view without changing the joint's parameters. You can also adjust the spring and damper of the joint's axis. The bone settings contain basic Rigidbody settings and a collider editor for the selected bone. In the Colliders section, you can generate a collider for the selected bone and edit its settings, or remove created colliders. For auto-generation, click on the Simple or By Connection button. Clicking these buttons will create an object with a capsule collider as a child of the selected bone. The Add Group button creates an empty child object of the selected bone. Its position and rotation are specified as local to the selected bone. You can add box, sphere, and capsule colliders to this object in any quantity. You can edit colliders' basic settings in the inspector. To make the mirrored colliders appear in the mirrored bone, click on To Mirror. You can also edit the scale and position of colliders in the scene view by clicking the Edit button. You can also select another editing tool in scene view. To disable editing mode in the scene view, click the Editing button. By clicking on the Edit button in Group N, you will be able to edit the position and rotation of the child object with the colliders. If no joint is selected, the menu will change to edit the Ragdoll parameters. In Joints/Bones, there is a Show All Joints toggle to be able to see in the scene view the settings of all joints. If necessary, you can copy the parameters of all the joints of a selected Ragdoll and paste the parameters you need into another Ragdoll. Remove Joints is also here. In Colliders, you can set physics material to all Ragdoll colliders created with Ragdoller, generate colliders for Ragdoll's bones, copy colliders and paste to another character, or remove all colliders created with Ragdoller. In Ragdoll settings, you specify the total mass of the Ragdoll, and each bone's mass will be calculated from its volume and coefficient of mass. You can also specify collision detection for all rigid bodies in Ragdoll, and enable automatic tensor for all rigid bodies if you need it. Enabling free bones makes all Ragdoll bones in the Ragdoll state have a null parent transform. Depending on the type of Ragdoll you choose, the interface will change, hiding or showing additional functions and modules, which I will talk about later. Once you are done setting up the Ragdoll, deselect the joint and click the Generate button. Depending on the selected Ragdoll type and its modules, the character structure may change during generation, and other scripts will appear on it. To demonstrate the difference between Ragdoll types, let's take an already configured future Ragdoll. Permanent Ragdoll is currently selected. As you can see, there are no additional scripts, and this character will always be in a Ragdoll state. Let's take a look at Blendable Ragdoll. The character now has a Ragdoll Control script that controls the settings and state. How to work with this script will be explained later in this video. Also, let's take a look at Active Ragdoll. Now the character structure has been rebuilt, and its base has additional scripts. The Active Ragdoll Control script controls the settings and state. The character structure has been redesigned, and now there are two skeletons. The first one is responsible for Ragdoll animation, and the second one for Ragdoll physics. The Ragdoll Control script controls the character's settings and state, whether it is animated or ragdolled. Colliders Disabling toggle controls the deactivation of Ragdoll colliders during animation. Enabling free bones makes all Ragdoll bones in the Ragdoll state have a null parent transform. When entering the animated state, the bones will be in the correct order. Resurrection time is a value in seconds for the transition time from Ragdoll state to animation state. Animation delay specifies the normalized value of resurrection time at which the animation pauses when transitioning to the animation state. You can also see this delay in seconds just below. Smooth speed makes the animation speed transition linearly from 0 to 1 after the animation delay action ends during the remaining resurrection time. Resurrection height is the length of the ray from the root bone directed toward gravity to find the solid body under the ragdoll, enabling a correct transition from the ragdoll state to the animation state. The active Ragdoll Control script controls active Ragdoll settings, and some of these settings are similar to those in the Ragdoll Control script, so there will be a bit of repetition. Kill time is a value in seconds for the transition time from the animation state to the Ragdoll state. Resurrection time is a value in seconds for the transition time from Ragdoll state to animation state. Animation delay specifies the normalized value of resurrection time, at which the animation pauses when transitioning to the animation state. You can also see this delay in seconds just below. Smooth speed makes the animation speed transition linearly from 0 to 1 after the animation delay action ends during the remaining resurrection time. Spring multiplier is the main multiplier for the angular drive position spring for all configurable joints in a ragdoll. When configuring Ragdoll in the Ragdoller editor, you can select bones that serve as animation anchors. After the Ragdoll is generated, the active Ragdoll Anchors Control script controls these anchors. More about this script will be told later. You can also control the spring multiplier for individual bone groups. The Angular Damping Control script adds additional angular friction to the bone's rotation. For example, now the ragdoll will be stiff due to the high angular friction parameters. In the script interface, you will see a list of bone groups whose angular friction parameters you can control. By expanding the group settings, you will see these settings and the focus button. The focus button focuses the scene view on a specific group of bones. Also, in the scene view, you will see the circular planes on which the joints of the expanded group can rotate. The angular damping control script affects the angular velocity between bones in each joint, and if the rotation limit angle and the angular friction parameter are greater than 0. When configuring Ragdoll in the Ragdoller editor, you can select bones that serve as animation anchors. The active Ragdoll Anchors Control script works both in conjunction with active Ragdoll Control and separately. The Select button will select a game object, a bone that belongs to the skeleton responsible for the animation. This bone will have a configurable joint script, and its connected body will be the bone from the skeleton responsible for physics. As a kinematic rigid body, the animation anchor bone can control the position and orientation of the physical bone via a configurable joint using the active Ragdoll Anchors Control script. The toggles opposite, linear and angular, control the motions and angular motions of the configurable joint of the animated anchor. Expanding linear and angular will show the drive settings for the configurable joint of the animated bone. Here is an example of what happens if you don't use the angular anchor but use only the linear anchor. Let's imagine a situation where not all the bones of an active ragdoll need to be physical. To animate the non-physical bones of the physical skeleton in Ragdoller, enable Animate Bones. The script only transfers animation to non-physical bones and has no other functions. The active Ragdoll Visual Shift Control script enables visual transitions between Ragdoll and animation states. To add visual shift for active Ragdoll in Ragdoller, enable the Add Visual Shift toggle and change the settings as needed. Visual shift will always transit the visual position between the root bones of the animation skeleton and the physical skeleton. If rotation only is disabled, then visual shift also occurs between bone positions. If enabled, then only bone local rotations will be shifted. Is slurp corresponds to using the bone's rotation transition method, slurp or lerp. I hope this guide is useful to you, and thank you for watching.